Everyone, welcome back to the Jay's Sit Down Podcast. I am your host, Jay, and I'm here today with Daryl Green of 24 Hour Sports, uh, big sports channel. He has it on YouTube. Make sure you guys check him out there. And we're glad to have him on the podcast today to talk a few things, most notably Budda Baker requesting a trade out of Arizona. Big news there. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll go in deep dive into the best receivers in the NFL draft this year. Who are the top five guys? If Daryl gives his guys, I'll give mine. And then should the Rams take a quarterback this year in the draft? So, Daryl, before we get started, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
All right, man, no problem. Yeah. So, and before we get started, guys, make sure you check out. I'm Daryl. You probably don't know this, which you've probably seen on some of my videos if you watch. I'm now an author. Okay, so I wrote a book. It's called "A Good Man in the Evil World." So make sure you guys check it out. It's available on Amazon. Paperback, ebook version, also on Goodreads.com. So make sure you guys check it out there. Just search it up. I'll leave a link in the description below on the video, so make sure you guys check that out. I really appreciate the support. So, Daryl, Budda Baker requests a trade out of Arizona. You know, the Cardinals have been a train wreck the past couple of years. They fired Cliff Kingsbury. They're just in a complete mess right now, and he wants to leave. So, what are you thinking about that?
I think if they're going to trade him, because I feel like he said if they can make him the highest paid safety, that's probably the only way that they'll be able to keep him. But as far as moving him, I think you can get some good pieces for him because he's only 27. Still, to me, I have him as one of the best safeties in the league. And I think whatever team he goes to, now it depends, but if he goes to a solid team, he can take them to the next level. If he goes to a solid defense, he can make it a good defense. He goes to a good defense, he can make it a great defense. So if any team, if I got the cap space, because they're going to have to rework a contract if they get Budda Baker. But if I'm any team, I'm trying to get him. I'm calling the phone. I'm seeing Jonathan Gannon, all of those people in Arizona. I need to see what does it take to get Budda Baker.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely one of the best safeties in the league. You got to mention his name when you talk about the top safeties in the NFL. I mean, what he's able to do, the speed, on the field, the processing. He's very smart, instinctful player. Can make plays on the football. Come up and tackle. He's physical. Something you have to be at the safety position in the NFL, and he's all those things. He's really the whole package when you watch it on tape. And unfortunately for him, just the Cardinals, man, this have been, it's been a disappointment to say the least for them. And they are changing, they're changing the direction of the franchise, firing Cliff Kingsbury, they're bringing in Jonathan Gannon, who was a part of that, Eagles defense and went to the Super Bowl. He had one of the best defenses in the league, so he's taking over there. But you kind of get the feel like, and there was a video, I don't know if you saw it, where he mentioned like, oh yeah, I really like Eagles coach. Could the Eagles be a possible option for Budda Baker?
It really depends on the direction of the team, because see what Budda Baker can do. There may be 1 to 2 safeties who I think can even reach the surface of what he can do, because he has a lot of range. He can play in the box. This draft, although if they want to take the route of drafting a safety, there's not much to offer that can equal the production of Budda Baker. So I think, like I said, it depends on the direction. If they want to work out a contract, or if they just want to take him as a rental, because this is a team with a Super Bowl window. So that would make sense for me if they could get him, compete again, try to get to and win a Super Bowl this time. Mm-hmm. That would make sense. But if they want to keep him long term, I think that may be harder to do because of the players and the talent they have. They're gonna have contracts coming up. Just paid hurts. So it's hard for me to see long term, but I think as a rental, 1 to 2 years, I would go get him, especially if I'm the Eagles.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Super Bowl window, very close. Obviously, they were just there last year. You could say maybe having a guy like him on that defense, not saying the whole outcome would change, but it definitely could have helped that team. And, it's just interesting. I think, like I said, I really like Budda Baker's game. I've always been a fan of his since he came out in the draft, into the Cardinals. He is a great player. So any team really should jump on this opportunity. And you mentioned the Eagles. They lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the Lions in free agency. Great pickup for Detroit. A lot of people thought they were going to bring him back. I thought they were going to bring C.J. Gardner-Johnson back, but they didn't. So now you have that safety spot that's kind of really. I mean, they did sign Edmonds, but
Yeah.
I don't really know if the production can be, equal value there. So I think they should really jump on that move to get Budda Baker. Personally,
Yeah, the jumping on Edmonds, I don't, because I'm a Steelers guy. I've saw Edmonds. I don't think he's a guy who's gonna play one high, who's a ball hawk like CJ Gardner Johnson was. I think he's more downhill type of box, playing in the box type of player. So they still need that guy who's gonna roam in the deep third and things like that. So if Budda Baker can do that, so that's why it makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So real quick, so you're a Steelers guy. So a little info as to why they didn't retain Terrell Edmonds there.
I think I like what we have, and having him would have been nice. But if he felt there was a better offer there, then we're not gonna go out our way to pay him. So that was really what I think. We still got DeMonte Kazi in the back end. Still got Minka. When you got Minka, you can make up for a lot of deficiencies because he can do so much. So I really would have liked to keep him, in all honesty. But the fact that we didn't, I'm not losing sleep at night over it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Terrell Edmonds, you mentioned, yeah, he's more of a guy that's he's down by. He's gonna play down low. He's physical. And not really a ball hawk type of guy that Gardner Johnson was. So well, it'll definitely be interesting. Black again, yeah. So Budda Baker requested a trade. So we'll see what happens there. The draft is a week from today. Wow. So it's already been here, man. It's we are almost there. So I mean, we might see a draft day trade. We might see something that happened before, or it might not be until after the draft. We don't know. But like you said, you have the choice of either getting him on the rental or paying him. So just a matter of like you said, what the franchise wants to do to whoever wants to go and get him. What they're trying to do as far as the future remains with a player like that. But I know Budda is looking to find a long-term home somewhere, probably a great team. And I think personally, the Eagles do make a lot of sense. Probably the best team he could go to right now.
Yeah.
Other than maybe, Chiefs, right? But we don't get into that. they have enough, right? They already have everybody. So, but moving on to a different note. Speaking of the draft, Daryl, who would you say, man? Because this draft is receiver heavy this year. A lot of great guys who are receivers into this NFL draft. So, who are some guys that pop out to you? Maybe like 5 guys or so that you think are like really good, that can make impact in the league wherever they go.
So, I got kind of an untraditional list. I think I'm not really gonna follow what I've seen. I'm just gonna go by the guys who I think I would draft and I think can make impacts right away. So number one, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba. If I'm in the draft, I would take him first. Going into number 2, it's kind of close for me, but I really like Jordan Addison. I like him. I think he's a route runner. Now, Quentin Johnson, I got him at number 3, and it's really those 3. I think it's safe to say in the top 3, but I have them in a different order than kind of what I saw. But Quentin Johnson he's nice, but I like the size. The speed is there. It's there. The traits are all there. But as far as being a every down go-to number 1 weapon, I just don't know. And you would think with the size, you would think that that's the case, but I don't see that type of guy. And he was good at TCU, but as far as that translating to the NFL, he has some work to do. But it's a lot to work with, but he has some work to do. Now going into number 4, this is where it gets kind of interesting. The more I've been looking at it, I think I'm gonna give you 2 guys. I'm gonna give you 2 guys. So the more I've been thinking about it, I really like Cedric Tillman. The more I watch him, and he had the injury. Yeah. But I think that's kind of so. Whoever team gets Cedric Tillman is getting a steal, and I think with the injury, that's knocked down his draft stock a bit. But when he was on the field, I mean, we saw it, the connection with him and Herndon Hooker. So him, he brings some nice size. And you think about it, this receiver class is really small. Like a lot of these guys, we got a lot of slot receivers, a lot of fast guys, but we don't really have the outside receivers. So I think in a class like that, he can really stand out and be an impact player. And this last part is kind of hard for me. The more I watch, I'm starting to like Marvin Mims, but I'm not going to propel him to my number 5 guy. I'm going to still keep Josh Downs. And I think Josh Downs, the production is there. The stats were off the roof. And I mean, really, coming into the NFL, he's going to be a slot receiver. That's where I see him as a slot receiver. And I think it's an unfair criticism on the slot receivers. A lot of people say, there's not a high ceiling there. But you just get a guy who's going to come in and produce. I don't see the problem with that. I would draft him early second, late first, maybe. Kind of a reach for late first, but I think early second, he's kind of booked to go in that area.
Yeah. And slot receivers, as you see now, are really becoming a staple part of offenses as the league goes into a more of a pass-happy, trend, right? Those slot receivers are becoming more and more important. Teams are addressing that position, a lot, so that's something that a lot of, teams have been looking for, guys that can come in and just, just, hey, go fly. We'll get it to you, right? It sounds simple. I mean, and it almost really is. It's like, hey, just go fly downfield. We'll get the ball to you, right? And that's, as like I said, as simple as it sounds, it's really important, and you see like the teams are trying to implement that into their offenses now as it goes into more of a spread and type of deal. So yeah, I think for me, I'll say I'll definitely go with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's amazing. And of course, he played too much last year. He was hurt, but he's a great receiver. I think one of the best in this draft. So I think he would make a huge impact anywhere he goes. Maybe I don't know. He's just awesome. Then I'll go with Jalen Hyatt in Tennessee. He is dude. He's a beast. Some things he can work on, like you said. There's with a lot of these guys. It's not going to be easy. I mean, with any rookie, the transition to the league, right? And there's things, of course, that he can work on. But just when you talk about just pure, the speed is there. The route running is pretty good. He had a monster game against Alabama, in last year. So, everybody's really going off of that tape, right? He's a guy that's he can go get you touchdowns. He can go score for you. He's a guy that's gonna make plays. That's the main part of it. He can make plays. Then I'm going with Zay Flowers, a guy that I've been really high on. I love Zay Flowers, man. I do. I'm a Zay Flowers fan.
That's who I forgot.
Boston College product.
He would be number 2 on my list, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, to me, because you talk about that slot, he is a guy that can just, he can line up outside too. He lined up a little bit outside when he was at Boston College. And he's a guy, the route running, he's got the crisp route running skills, very fluid. That obviously, again, there's the ability to just get downfield, and he's not afraid to go up and get those contested catches. So he'll go up there and get it, and so, I like Zay Flowers for a lot of teams. I even mentioned that in my last podcast. I was like, the Steelers need to go and get a receiver in this year's draft. I believe they do. You got George Pickens, you got Deontay Johnson, and they went and traded for. Oh yeah, I want to get your opinion on the Allen Robinson trade in a second. But yeah, so they went and traded for Allen Robinson, so I think they need a receiver. But your thoughts, man, on Allen Robinson coming over to Pittsburgh?
I see it as really, I really see it as a low risk, high reward. The guy that I really think is gonna pop for us. Allen Robinson, he's nice. He's had solid seasons, especially in Jacksonville. But now, getting kind of older, I think though he could be a good security blanket. Now, in Los Angeles, it was expected to be a great number 2 receiver to Cooper Kupp. That's what his role was expected to be. Mm-hmm. And that was just a dumpster fire. Everything in Los Angeles, I don't know what last season was, but now that we got him, I think I like our receivers coach too. The development that we have in that room, But Calvin Austin is the guy that I really think is going to step up with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. So it's going to be interesting. Now, in today's game, 3 receivers is not enough. So you bringing those receivers in and out. So he's definitely going to have a role. And I think him being a bigger body, because Deontay Johnson not that big. Calvin Austin definitely not that big. So him and Pickens being those bigger bodies, I think that's really going to help us, particularly, in the red zone, short yardage, things like that. So it's just a low risk, high reward. I didn't jump out my chair when I saw Allen Robinson.
Yeah, I didn't either. He just the guy. He's been a solid player in his career. With Jacksonville and then Chicago, he put up like back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with very very atrocious quarterback play. And the fact that he was able to go and do that just it kind of speaks volumes to him. But now indeed, like he goes to the Rams, and it's just I don't know what that was either. But he's on the Steelers now. So, and I say, yeah, I think the Steelers should go and get a receiver in the draft this year. And so to finish on my list, I'm gonna go with I said Zay Flowers, I said Jackson Fajiva, I said Jalen Hyatt. So 2 more. I got of course Jordan Addison. Take speaks for itself. And then man, that last spot, it's tough. I don't know, man. Like I said, it's a very great class. I guess I could give it to Quentin Johnson. Overall, he is a guy. I think he would help a lot of teams. He's a big body. He got a good catch radius, physical. So yeah, those are my top receivers in the draft. We'll see where they land this year.
So I got a question for you though.
Okay.
So
What's up?
I think I'm really intrigued by the guys who aren't really the first round guys in this class. I don't know why, but I think of like a Tyler Scott, Marvin Mims, those type of guys, and I think they can really be steals in the draft. Coming in, it's just the first round. I really like Zay Flowers. I really like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like Jordan Addison, but I wouldn't say I really like him. And I think once you get out of Zay Flowers and see Zay Flowers, the thing to me is you just get the ball in his hand. So it's like those type of players can run after the catch, and that's my type of player. So I think outside of that, though, it's not a great receiver class, but it's solid. And as we get to like the second and third round, there's some nice gems in there. So I just want to say that real quick.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Marvin Mims, a perfect example. I do love his game too. He's definitely an honorable mention there, and I think he'll definitely be there for a lot of teams. So it is a very solid class. So we'll see about that. It's now we mentioned the Rams a little bit earlier. So Matthew Stafford is like he's gonna be in LA a couple more years. Had that big contract, they traded for him. They got a Super Bowl, right? So now, but he's on his last legs. He got hurt last year. So the question is, Daryl, do the Rams go after a quarterback this year in the draft? Do you think they should?
I would say if the opportunity presents itself, there's some nice quarterbacks. I think of like just off the top of my head, I think Hidden Hooker, if he falls in their lap, I don't think they go get him, go out their way to try to pick him. But if he falls in their lap at a good value, Aiden O'Connell, Tanner McKee, those type of guys, and it's like I don't think the way the NFL is going, they're not bad quarterbacks. They're very solid quarterbacks, but it's like the ceiling, and that's all we talk about with quarterbacks is what is his ceiling. Because NFL coaches, they think they're masterminds. They could just turn traits into everything. So with the ceiling, I do think, like I said, it's all about the opportunity. If the opportunity presents itself now, I think there's some other holes, offensive line, that has to be addressed. We can even say running back. We can even say that. So, still, just traded Allen Robinson. You got Cooper Kupp. Who do you really have that you can trust outside of that? So, I feel like if I had to give a percentage on it, I would say 50% No, 50% yes. It just depends on how the draft board plays out.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really understandable. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you traded Allen Robinson away. Cooper Cup is your guy. I mean, who else you really have outside of that? Offensive line was a big issue for them last year. So they definitely need to address that. Running back, like you said, you can even go out and get your running back. It's another solid running back class this year as well. So um, yeah, yeah, the Rams. I just first I asked that question because I think that is something that they, if not this year, next year, you want to keep that in the back of your mind if you're the Rams. Just because again, the window for the Super Bowl is not is over. That's done. We saw that last year. That's done. That won't happen again for a while. So maybe this is the time where you go and get you a guy to kind of and let him sit under Stafford for a year, maybe two, and mold him, and then throw him out there when you're ready, maybe 24, maybe in 25, depending on what year they take a quarterback. So that's just something that for everybody to keep in their minds. But and lastly, here, man, on the podcast. So I'm sure you've been hearing the little smoke going around about Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and how the Panthers might be leaning towards picking Bryce instead at number one, and how all this this stuff, and it happens every year with the draft. There's always this stuff that goes around. Are you buying into that, or do you believe that that most chances are Carolina's sticking with picking Stroud at number one?
With a question like that, it really comes down to what I would do versus what is the team's philosophy. Now, if I had to go based off the team's philosophy, then I would say it's just a smoke screen. I would say based off the team's philosophy and what I have, a track record of, I would say CJ Stroud is the guy based on, Frank Reich thinking like that. But what I would do, I would take Bryce Young because I do think he's a better player. But the size, is
Yeah.
it's really a tough situation to think about. But CJ Stroud. Now, I think what I do want to say is, and I don't know if a lot of people have looked at it like this, but I think CJ Stroud is being criminally underrated because everyone's talking as if he didn't have a great college career. Now, I understand we can go to some things. Under pressure, he didn't look as good. He didn't show us the ability to improvise as much on tape, except for the Georgia game. We can say all of those things. I just don't think that's fair. We look at CJ Stroud. You can't tell me CJ Stroud can't improvise. Now, I understand with the supporting crew, having Marvin Harrison, he's going to be the first receiver off the board next year. Mm-hmm. And then you have Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones. You got all of these pieces on the offense. So it really comes down to, in an NFL offense, without the best weapons, who's going to have the ability to create? I think that's Bryce Young. I would take Bryce Young. And I think when the Panthers continue to watch film, they only got a week left. By next week, they'll have that decision.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Bryce Young, it's like the size. I mean, like we keep hearing this all the time. I mean, and yeah, size is important in the NFL because you got monsters on the other side from after you, and teams don't want their quarterback just getting like snapped in half like a wishbone when they first in their first game. So. But then again, it's like you saw what Bryce is. He is a national champion, and he won the Heisman. And CJ Stroud, amazing quarterback too. I mean, he had one of his best games against the supposed best defense in college football in Georgia. And so, if it's me, I'm picking CJ Stroud at number one. I agree with you there. If it's me, but personally, again, I don't know. Maybe this is all a smokescreen, or maybe they do go out and get Young. I just don't. It's just not. I just don't believe it's going to happen. I just think they're going to go with C.J. Stroud at number one. But all this stuff breaking out lately about Stroud, there's a lot of negativity going on around him lately, and this wasn't here earlier. So I'm just curious as to what all that's about. But hey, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't get it as far as no quarterback in this draft is perfect. And I mean, the only quarterback that I had no worries about was Trevor Lawrence. And I'm talking about recent years, Andrew Luck, guys like that. But this isn't a flawless quarterback class. So people want to sit and tear down CJ Stroud, we can tear down Bryce Young. We can tear down Anthony Richardson. It's really just about who do you believe in. And I think the biggest thing for me is the person. So it's like the interviews. How are these interviews going with Bryce Young? When y'all talk to him, when we talk to CJ Stroud, do we feel like that's the guy who can command our locker room? That's what matters to me, because I think they're all good football players in their own right, and depending on the scheme, they can have success. So it just depends on who's the player and who do the coaches buy into.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, locker room, presence is important. Who the guys, the character, right? That's the main thing. Are these guys have a good character? How
Yeah.
are they going to behave off the field? With their teammates. Can they get everybody, to rally behind them in the locker room? Those are the traits you're going to look for too. So those are extremely important. I'm glad you mentioned that there, because that's not getting a lot of talk right now. So, but Daryl, that pretty much wraps us up for today's podcast, man. We appreciate you coming on, giving your insight here. And as always, so we're looking forward to next Thursday. Yeah, like I said, a week from today, NFL draft kicks off from Kansas City. So I'm looking forward to that, man. But thank you for coming on.
No problem.
Yes, sir. So, guys, that's Daryl Green of 24 Hour Sports. Make sure you guys check him out. Their YouTube, subscribe to his channel, everything. He's got great content there, posts a lot of great stuff. So make sure you give him a watch. And of course, check us out on Jace with Down on YouTube and every podcast platform. Subscribe to us, check us out, and we will see you next time on the show. Daryl, we appreciate you, man.
Always.
All right, man.